Senator Rex Patrick with the Centre Alliance Group joins us now. Good morning, Rex Patrick.
Good morning, David.
How precarious was our power supply in the last, 6-12 months?
Well, from answers provided to me in the Senate, the Australian Energy Market Operator, which is AEMO, is basically intervening in the SA market on a daily basis and sometimes more than once a day. On the 4th of October last year, they intervened 4 times, and on the 6th of December last year, 6 times they had to intervene to stabilise South Australia's power grid.
Now, is that because not enough power was being generated, or was it variable power? Was it unstable power?
It happens in situations where AEMO predicts that there's going to be some problem in meeting demand. And so what they're typically doing is directing gas-fired power stations to come online to make sure there's enough base load, enough inertia in the system to keep the power grid stable.
Rex Patrick, though, for all of us whose lights didn't go out and there was enough power in the end, why should we care or worry about this?
Well, there's 2 things. Firstly, whenever AEMO directs a gas-fired power station to turn on, that comes at a cost to AEMO, which gets passed back to the retailers and gets passed back to you as the consumer. Secondly, we want to have a situation where ultimately we get to a point of having renewable energies providing 100% of our energy. What we're seeing now is the system is not engineered to be able to do that. Now, Dan Van Holst Pellekaan has said that the solution to this is the New South Wales to South Australian interconnector, but the problem is all that's doing is transferring the problem to allow us to get access to coal-fired power and to gas-fired power from New South Wales. It kicks the can along the road. We have to engineer our system properly to make sure that with renewables we can meet the demands.
Sorry, what is the engineering solution?
Well, the engineering solution is it's a system engineering solution where you look at the system from a total system perspective. So instead of just saying, look, there's an operator who wants to set up a wind farm, there's an operator that wants to set up a solar farm, and looking at the business aspects of it, you have to look at it and say, well, in actual fact, what we need is actually pumped hydro, we need solar thermal, we need batteries, and that has to be the priority at the moment. So you have to engineer the system such that it can meet the demand of clean, reliable and affordable energy. That can't happen by accident. It has to be properly system engineered.
All right, well, let's go to the Energy Minister, Dan Van Holst Pellekaan. Good morning to you.
Good morning, David, Ali and Rex.
Well, first of all, do you accept what Rex Patrick is saying, that between, July and December last year, the market operator had to intervene 122 times to keep the lights on?
Yes, I don't doubt the statistics that the AEMO has provided publicly. And in fact, I agree with much of what Rex has just said. Because it is exactly what myself and Premier Stephen Marshall have been saying from opposition and through now. I don't agree with absolutely everything he said, but we have plans in place to deal with this. You will have noticed that for the last 2 summers, for the first time in a very, very long time, we've not had any blackouts. You also know that electricity prices are starting to come down, not far enough yet. We've got lots more work to do there. With regard to the engineering of the system, that is exactly the sort of thing we're doing. Under the previous government, if somebody wanted to build a wind farm, they went through a process, they got permission, and off they went. And you will have heard me say many, many times, we can't just keep doing this. So we're looking at small-scale storage for households so they can support themselves. We're looking at grid-scale storage. We also need the interconnector. And David, the thing that I disagree with Rex on that he's just said is about kicking the can down the road and just importing fossil fuel electricity from New South Wales. That's actually not the case. Now, there will be some times where we'll be glad to import their gas, electricity or other fossil fuels. But it's actually about sharing demand and supply with another state where the demand and supply requirements are different. Okay. So we will export an enormous amount of renewable energy into New South Wales.
But, Minister, the only thing that kept the lights on were those gas generators, yes?
Well, look, I've always said we need to get the mix right.
Yeah, but just work with me on this. The only thing that kept
Sure.
the lights on last year on those 122 times in South Australia were the gas generators.
No, there was other electricity working at the same time as the gas generators, but we did need the gas as part of the mix, and that's exactly as it should be.
Yeah, but if you didn't have the gas generators kicking in, we would have had power blackouts.
Oh, yes, I agree with that,
Okay.
no problem at all.
So
But
doesn't that mean that 2 years after you were elected, we're still relying on the patch-up measures that Labor rushed through after the statewide blackout?
Okay, well, I'll ask you to work with me on this then. We were left a mess, right? We were left an absolute mess, and we are fixing it. Proof of that is, and I'm very cautious...
No, these patch-up measures that you're relying on, they were actually put in by Labor before they went to that election. I mean, you could blame them for the stuff-up, but they rushed through the gas generators. They were there, and you're still relying on them 2 years later.
David, that's just not the case. We've used those diesel generators that Labor put in place once in the last 2 years. The statistics that Rex is talking about is 122 interventions by EMO over a 6-month period. So they are very, very different things. What I'm saying, David, is that we will have gas generation with us for a long, long time in South Australia. Less and less over time, but it will always be part of our mix. We will have more renewables and we will have less gas. But gas will be with us for a long time, and so it should be, because there are some things that only gas can do. What we need to do is get the storage of renewable energy right, large and small scale, and get interconnection with another state so that we can swap our renewable and our gas generation at different times appropriately. Get the mix right, and we'll see a continued drop in prices for consumers and a continued improvement in reliability.
Central Alliance Senator for South Australia, Rex Patrick, do you have concerns about this interconnector?
Oh, look, I support the interconnector, but one thing we have to do, and I'll ask Dan to commit to this, is there's an option at the moment to make the transmission towers for that interconnector in Whyalla or alternatively in China. If you make it in Whyalla, it's 150 South Australian jobs, and it's also an extra 5% of GFG's order intake, which will help GFG out. Post-coronavirus, there can be no choice. The interconnected transmission lines will have to be made from here in Australia, and I'd like Dan to make a commitment that will happen.
Minister?
And in fact, the federal government has contributed some money towards a feasibility study to look at exactly whether that can be done, what costs would be involved, not only the cost of tooling up and being able to make those at Whyalla, which, of course, all other things being equal, I would love to do, but also what would be the cost of the product, keeping in mind that every dollar that's spent on the interconnector, while it will push down at the net the cost of electricity for all South Australians, every dollar has to be recovered. So, if it costs absolutely no more, then of course that's an easy decision. If it costs more, we just have to weigh up the costs and benefits, because we want as many jobs in South Australia, and Whyalla is going through a transition at the moment, which we want to support. But we also need the cost of electricity to get down as low as it can possibly be. So yes, we are looking, both state and federal government and Electronet is looking at exactly that with GFG and another consulting firm, because if we can achieve that, we certainly will.
And Minister, before you leave us, there were reports, I think it was in the Weekend Australian last weekend, that if steelworks around the country close down because of the coronavirus, they won't start up again. Is that your expectation in Whyalla?
Well, it's not my expectation that they should close in Whyalla, but I think it's probably fair to say, and this is not just about steelworks, it's about lots of things. It could be cafes and restaurants. If, some of them that closed because of coronavirus may not be able to reopen. I think that's a fear that we all hold for businesses and employees, not just in South Australia, but around the world.
The steel industry was saying it's so expensive to start a steelworks back up again once it's been closed down. So it's really important to keep them ticking over. And is there any question mark over Whyalla?
Oh, Well, look, I think it's very fair to say if Whyalla were to close, would it reopen again? That's a question mark, without a doubt, and that's a concern that we should all have. On the bright side, though, we've been looking for quite a while now at the generation of production of hydrogen as an export into other parts of the world. Research, particularly University of Adelaide and some others at the moment, is saying that if we can generate hydrogen, we would actually be better, and in fact would be more economical to bring more in energy-intensive industries like steelworks into Australia and use our hydrogen than to export the hydrogen to them overseas. So yes, of course, what's going on at Whyalla is on my mind every day, particularly as a Port Augusta-based Member of Parliament and responsible minister. We're doing everything we can to help them. We still have $50 million on the table, which the previous government allocated towards GFG's transition program, which the Marshall government has kept on the table very deliberately for GFG to access if and when appropriate. That money still sits there. We're doing everything we can to help Whyalla.
Dan Van Holst, Pellekaan, Energy Minister, thanks very much for your time.
Thank you, Ali.
Also part of that was Centre Alliance Senator for SA, Rex Patrick. And David, I don't know about you, but I feel